Hey everyone, it's Nixie, and today I want to share my deck list I use for my one and only RTN. I hope everyone had a great RTN season, and super happy so many Dorys made top 8, and even winning quite a few of them. Unfortunately for me, I made top 8 with a 5-1 record in Swiss, but lost in my first top 8 match. So no Nats invite for me, but that's fine. Um, I think this deck that I'm about to share is still very solid, and I want to give it to you guys so you get your guys' thoughts on it, and hope it will be of some use for you guys before it's completely changed in Dust Till Dawn. But before I get into my deck, let's do a quick report on my RTN. So my RTN that I went to had around 41 players that turned out and had a super diverse meta. The most hero played was Dromai at 5 players, then Lexi and Briar at 4, and the rest at 3 or lower, and was really awesome to see such an open field. There were 2 other Dories, so was super happy to see that. Thankfully I didn't play into them because I would hate to, have to knock them out out of the wins from them. So yeah, glad I didn't fight into them, but happy I got to see some other Dories being repped. All right, let's quickly go through my matchups. My first match was against a Briar who I was able to out aggro and keep pressure. They didn't get to draw into Mount Heroic, thankfully, and they also had a miss block on the Supremacy churn, so I got to keep my counters and eventually got to get the win there. My second match was against Oliver from OKNY, who is a super experienced Dromai player, and I played with him all the time. He was on a hybrid list, so not the known Empress or Big Dragon deck that's currently running around. And was, kind of had to adapt to it. But he was able to get a Tomotai really early into the game and blew up my bracers, so that was very sad. But I was able to kill it and keep up the pressure on him and strip cards while still getting some counters here and there. And at the end, I was, very lucky and, I was able to fatigue him. But he got very dicey. It was very scary. But the MVPs for me for that game were Dynamos and the 2 Remembrances that I ran, which did a lot of work. So happy to have those in my deck against him. Third match was against a Brute that was rolling super hot. I mean, very hot, like multiple sixes and fours, no ones. Didn't see one in any game. It was very scary, right? When they could like swing claws freely and then attack. And I'm trying to play a mid-range game, so I need to like block out, try to preserve health, try not to get into reckless range. It was very hard. We both played mid-range, so we traded a lot of blows back and forth. But luckily, I came out with the win. But it really could have gone either way, to be honest. He was a really great player. There was one sequence where he blocked for exact with an equipment, and this is when I played precision press. So we kind of forgot that my attack will still hit because precision press has the piercing effect where it increases my attack by 1 when they block by equipment. So because of that, I was able to keep counter, and this kind of ruined his plans a bit. And from there, I was able to get a little bit of momentum, and I was able to close out the game. But yeah, it was a tight game. Fourth game was against an Azalea on Death Dealer, who tried to redden a ledger me a few times. But luckily, on one of the red and ledger turns, I had pride and lots of reactions, so I was able to just, pump up damage and also get a counter. I also didn't block out on arrows like infecting shot or drill shots, kept my armor for things like the barbed undertow if they're running that, or red and ledger. So I was able to, manage my health, use my health as a resource, and just use my armor for those big on hits that will stop my churn. Um, Eventually, I was able to play out Glistening, where they overblocked to prevent it from happening, but I had a Twinning in Arsenal, and then I was able to go around with it. Then I was able to get 3 counters that turn, and after that he tried to keep on resetting my counters, but couldn't because a lot of his cards blocked for 2, and I had enough pumps as well to go over, so eventually I was able to get the win there. Fifth match was against a 5 player who I played before and lost previously on a Talishar game. So I never got to play him in real life, but it was great to play with him and finally meet him. He won the dice roll and had me go first, which is not great in this aggro matchup because I really want to go second. But my opening hand was really nuts. It was a supremacy with the red puncture, red iron song response, and a blue. So I play the supremacy. He blocks with his whole hand for like I think 10. And I'm still able to go over with the puncture and iron song response and hit. I draw into blue and I think about it and I decide to go for it and break my bolters so that I could, push more damage in and get a counter. So I pump with bracers, swing again, get a counter, and then draw. And I'm right before I'm about to Arsenal, I noticed it's Iron Song Pride, and I have 1 resource floating. So I'm like, oh, I can play this. So I play it, and I have 2 counters, turn 0. Really cool. Um, but that fun didn't last that long because next turn I think um, when I played, I thought I could keep the counters, but he had 2 sinks that he drew into, so he reset my counters. Um, yeah, it was a really close game. Eventually came down to like 2 or 3 health each, and he had a double Art of War turn, but he ended up drawing into 3 lava bursts when he had no snapdragons left, so he couldn't play all of them out. He had to like pitch 2 of them. So that was a pretty big turning point. But yeah, I was able to get the win there. And then my last match was against Tao Tao on his signature Fatigue Uzuri. Um, I think I don't have enough reps into his exact list, and usually Uzuri's is not too bad, but Fatigue is always the hardest matchup for Dory. All the D reacts just we can't get going on our damage because we can't get counters on our Dawn Blade. It's really tough. Also, the new daggers, the Nerve Scalpel, and the Orbiclast, that one, it's really hard to block properly now. Before, when they only had spiders, but it was, it didn't do anything to Dory, so it was really easy to block. But yeah, now it's very hard. I was able to beat his fatigue reacting all the time, but his fatigue Uzuri is just another beast. It's so strong. So this match was very hard, and he had it under control the whole time. He was able to take this match very cleanly, and to be honest, I'd rather fight an Oldhim than his Uzuri list. I think his list is super strong against Dory, and he's also like a phenomenal player, so probably the best Uzuri play there is. Yeah, but this was a loss, my first loss, but ended the Swiss now with 5-1 record. Not bad at all. Feeling pretty good. And then we went on to top 8. Top 8 had actually 8 different heroes, which is really awesome to see. We had Uzuri, um, Dory, me, an Oldhim, Lexi, Reinar, Katsu, Phi, and even a Riptide. How awesome is that? I think the Riptide even played the Oldhim in Swiss and was able to actually fatigue out the Oldhim. So really cool to see such a diverse field. But for me, I got paired into the Reinar that I played in Swiss. This time I got to go first and try to play the same mid-range game as before because that worked out pretty well. But he came in with crossmaps, and this time he changed his strategy. He wanted to go out all aggro and try to just burst me down. So his first turn that he was able to play, he got a Blood Rush Bellows, which I just tried to block out and minimize damage, but I still leaked, I think, like 4 or 6 damage. And then the turn after that, he rolled Scabs for 6. So I tried to block out against minimize damage. Which you can't always completely stop all the hits because they end up intimidating stuff here and there. And then next turn another scabs for like 5 and then a 4. Yeah, it was really rough. He was really still rolling really hot. Those dices are very lucky for him. Maybe I should ask him to roll my dice. Who knows? But I think at one point it was 40 to 19. I couldn't even touch him because he still has some D reacts like sinks and reinforce the line. It was very bad. And then eventually I clawed it back a bit and came back down to like 14 to 6. But I think that turn he just let me get hit and get counters because he came in with a red barraging beatdown to intimidate one card, then a Blood Rush Bellows to intimidate another, and then drew into a red barraging beatdown to intimidate again, and finally played a Massacre from Arsenal to strip my last card, and then swing at me for 16. And yeah, I can't stop that when I'm at 6 health. I even had an Oasis Arsenal that I used before he intimidated my last card, but it didn't make a difference. But yeah, congrats to him. Caught me off guard. I should have played aggressively when I saw the cross reps, but I didn't. And those shunts sometimes kind of clog up my hand if I try to go aggressive. But yeah, it was a really fun experience. Still got to get to top 8, got my Kofo Zuri, and will definitely uh, want to run it back again. But yeah, well, I think it was an overall great experience to play at a RTN. So yeah, that was my RTN. Um, so with that, let's dive into this deck that I took. This list is actually really close to some of my previous lists that some few changes. Let's break it down like how we did before. All right, so first let's talk about the disruption cards with some nasty on hits. We have our good old CNC, which goes into almost every single matchup except for Icelander and Azalea, because for Icelander, she could play things on instant speed from her arsenal, so it doesn't really matter there, unless they have the Sigil Permafrost, but most are still on Bullander, so this doesn't go in that one. And also for Azalea, she could still function pretty well without an arsenal, so that gets taken out. And in both those matches, I just want to get counters as soon as possible, so attack actions kind of hinder that. So that comes out. Oh, also, uh, for Codex turns on Azalea turn, having no attack actions graveyard, prevents you from discarding, so that helps a lot to help you keep your hand and be able to get those counters. So, but everything else, Command and Conquer is really good. Goes in every single deck. Then we have one Pursuit of Knowledge because this deck has a lot of unconditional go-against. So coming in with a Pursuit of Knowledge after a weapon swing can be very big. It usually forces the opponents to block it out to prevent a Dory from having 5-card hand. So that could be 2 cards, some equipment, or even a D-React, which is, if they use a D-React for Pursuit, that's great. You might be kind of sad it doesn't hit, but that's one less D-React you have to worry about for your Dawnblade. Alright, so that's we have one of that. And then we have our 2 favorite cards for racing, Steelblade Supremacy and Glistening Steelblade. So a lot of decks don't want to block, especially aggro. They will still have to block these out. If they don't, then they'll be punished severely because if you have bolters up, you can swing twice with Supremacy. That's at least 10 damage, and you get a counter and draw. If you're able to swing 3 times, that's huge. And Glistening, if this hits, initially it's not a lot of damage, but getting 3 counters is huge. So it incentivizes opponents to either completely block or not block at all. Alright, next we have the pumps. This is what enables you to either get a counter or keep a counter, right? So every deck needs them, and we'll start off with the most common ones. You're gonna have the 3 red Iron Song responses and also 1 blue Iron Song response. The reason I have the blue is because for the pitch, the block, as well as sometimes you just need to get over with 1 damage to be able to keep that counter or get that second swing, right? So having just the one of this blue Iron Song response is sometimes great. Then we have the staple Out for Blood, red, and then we also have the new staple Puncture. Um, it's just really good because it could be a 1 for 4, especially at endgame when opponents are forced to block with equipment because your counters are getting too big. So 1 for 4 is always great. Then we have 1 Stroke of Foresight, only 1 because I would don't have enough room to run the whole 3 of, and it's also the only other one that's a 1 for 3 pump with the 3 block. And the effect is kind of decent, being able to, change out one of your cards in your hand for one of the cards on the top deck. Could be good. And then we have Singing Steelblade, a +1 pump, and be able to fetch any reaction card. And then the blue overpowers. The it could be expensive for 3 costs for 4, but at end game, most of the time you have a lot of blues in your hand, and opponents don't have any D reacts left, so they overblock by 3. But this comes in for 4 and gets that break point. And we have just 2 red Iron Song Prides. Um, 2 because 3 felt kind of a liability of it being a no block, and sometimes you want a different pump instead of the +1. But having 1 of made it really hard to find it sometimes, so 2 for me was the sweet spot. And then we have our finisher cards, what's going to allow us to close out the games. So that'll be either dominate effects or cards we play in the reaction phase that opponents can't react to, and we're able to, kill them on that turn. So we have Iron Song Determination, just one of. Um, don't need more than one really. I mean, you could have more than one. You could run 3, but the +1 is mediocre unless it's very late game. So I just have one of here. And then we have Nourishing Emptiness. Um, Useful for those matchups that I talked about earlier where we don't run CNC, which was the Azalea and Icelander matchups. Coming for the 6 guaranteed dominate could help you close out the game. And if not, you end up being able to draw an extra card for a 5-card hand, and that could also help you end the game. And then we have 2 routes because it's always a good card. And I went to 2 because if you end up blocking with 1, you have 1 more. And also being able to, send a card back and chip in a lot of damage is also big. We have Overpower, just a big pump. 3 cost, and if they block your hand, coming for 6. So a lot of times they'll end up blocking for perfect block. So being able to go over will be very huge with this. And I also put Twinning Blade here because end game, when they don't have D reacts, opponents will be blocking with a lot of cards to overblock some nasty on hits, or try to remove your counters. But because you have so many go against sources, with a Twinning Blade, you're able to go around that block and you're able to get that hit in to kill them off. Or, preserve counters, which ends up, killing them because they just wasted their whole turn blocking out. And then we also have our favorite card, the Blue Pummel. You don't have to run it. I just like it. Just the threat of being able to pummel a CNC is very big. And you also get to do the fancy, cool thing of being able to tutor it with singing if you have enough resources and have a weapon on the combat chain. Next, we have our go against sources for a weapon, which is going to allow us to swing twice per turn and also be able to make our Dawn Blade stronger. So we're going to have a Warrior's Valor, a very staple card. We have 3 reds, and we also added 2 yellows and 2 blues. Why 2 yellows and 2 blues? Well, I like the yellows because coming in for Dawn Blade for 5 requires at least 2 cards to block out, or 1 card in a D react. The blue just could be covered with a D react for sync from Arsenals, kind of stops your turn. And for me, I think I like more unconditional go-agains, like in this side. So I didn't want too many of these conditional go-agains, but they're still good cards, so I decided to put these in. We have then Spoils of War, a very good go-against source. I think one of the best ones we have. It's a 1 for +2, give unconditional go-again, and on hit make a copper, which is not always relevant. But end game, you could filter your hand when you have a lot of blues left in deck. Or against Jeromai, who has a Kyloria, and if it hits, you just have them take a copper token instead of drawing a card. So that could be very important there. We then also have just 1 run through. I went down from 2 to 1 because I put that 1 towards the Yellow's Valor. Why is that? I found out that, you know, most of the time opponents ended up blocking my churn I had run through. It felt kind of bad. Um, so that's why I went down to 1. Not 0 because I think it's still a very good card. Just unconditional go against to be able to play something else after. And also it forces your opponent to still respect the naked down blade because if they don't and you play a run through, you come in for 5, it's much harder to block. So I just kept 1 over here. And then we have hit and runs, 0 cost, unconditional go again or weapon, very good. The second effect of being able to pump your next attack is not always relevant, but when it is, it's very impactful, especially with the red ones. The red ones, the +3, could be very big because, you know, the second attack is very strong, and if you have a twinning blade, this is what allows you to do the 3-hit combo in a turn without popping bolters. Right, so that's very big. So if you have a supremacy churn, be able to have a go again from like spoils of valor. They don't block. Then you play a red hit and run, and then you come in for now, 6 +2 from supremacy for 8, and and draw. Oh, it's pretty scary. But if that hits and you draw into twinning, or you had a twinning, I guess you have to have a twinning beforehand. If you play a twinning, then you swing again. Um, yeah, it's very big. And also the flexibility is very nice where the pump that happens for the second clause is not tied to a weapon. You could use it for attack action. So you could come in with the CNC for 9 instead of 6, or even pursuit for 7. Which is very good. Um, and you could also use it to just uh, swing twice and then play an EPA or something. So the flexibility is very nice. You could replace the hit and runs reds for like sharpened steel, which I think is fine, but then you won't have enough go against. I feel so that's why I have it here, and the flexibility again is very nice. Then we have 3 blue precision press, just a 1 cost unconditional go again. If they block with armor, it does have piercing. Don't forget that. I forgot it RtN, but luckily a judge was there and caught it and said like, you need to maintain board state, and that was relevant because it can help keep counter. So yeah, that was. Don't forget that. Then we have our favorite Majestic, Glint the Quicksilver, our best card that we have for blues. Just give go again and draw a card. So with this, we have 22 sources of go again, which should be enough most of the time to be able to get you a go again source every turn. But if you don't end up getting it, you do have bolters as a backup to be able to pop that and get go again. And also, you want around at least this much go again against Droma as well to make sure that you're able to maintain the board state, be able to kill a dragon, swing at her, or kill 2 dragons a turn, and grow that down blade. Alright, and now we have the rest of the cards, which I like to kind of think of it as the mid-range package, what we will need to help grind out the games. So we have our shunts, the red and blues, always good, a 1 for 4 or 1 for 6, and if it's a weapon, it does 1 damage back, so it's really strong against guardians, brutes, it even could be good against ninjas, because if you're like Kodachi locked, this is like your get out of jail free card to kill them on their turn if they're at 1. Um, yeah, just really strong D-React, and if you have these 1 cost, you're going to be running Tunic anyway, and that is what's going to be what you use to help pay for this. Yeah, so it's very good. So we have 6 of that. Then we have 2 red Oasis. Um, this is very good because of there's some Kanos that are running around now, and being able to stop their wildfire turns is big. Don't want to get spiked in a tournament because you run into a Kano, you didn't have enough AB or be able to stop that churn. Alright, it's also good against Guardians that have a CNC pummel, so you just block 6 and then the Oasis will cover the pummel. So very nice there. Also good against Uzuri that has Shred, so Oasis doesn't do anything. Great Mirror. Yeah, just Oasis is a very good card. And I would run more if I had space for it. Then we have one E-Pot. Just be able to play this out on some turns so you have two resources floating. It's always great. So that you have explosive churn or have your opponents always have to guess what you're gonna do because you have that energy pot floating. If the opponent thought having a tunic floating was, annoying, having an energy plot there makes it even more hard for them to play around what you're gonna do. And then we have two remembrances, went up from one to two because I was kind of thinking what I wanted to do against the Dromai matchup, and I only running four poppers, and I was thinking of running another six popper like Erase Face or Amnesia or something for Katsu, but I thought like why don't I just run another Remembrance, because then I could get another three poppers. Like oh yeah, that's so much better. And also it's good against fatigue too, because then you could get back your Warrior's Valors, Glistening, Supremacies, and your six like your CNCs or something. So yeah, that's why I have two of these, and it was very useful. And we also have the last card, Heart Findo. Um, Expensive card, not really needed, but I like it for the grindy matchups, being able to heal back some health, get me away from the danger zone when I'm like sub 5 health, because most of the time I'm like lower health than my opponent. So it's very useful there. But a lot of people ask, Nixie, do we need this Heart Findo? I tell them no, you don't need it. You could replace this with the blue Iron Song response. You could run a blue Warrior's Valor. You could you don't have to run this. You could run something else. You could run another EPOT too. That's fine. But just for me, since I had it, I'm running it. Last but not least, our equipment. So we have Crown of Providence, our tunic, Brave Forge bracers, and bolters. That's what's gonna go into the deck most of the time. And of course, our weapon of choice is the Dawn Blade. Um, then we have our sideboard equipment. We have the Norone Hood, which goes in for the Wizard matchup, and Dromai. We want to bring it in for Dromai because we want to prevent the chip damage from Burn Them On as Asphali. And since in Dromai matchup you don't want to get too low, or else they'll just kill us with Ashwing spam or a lot of dragons at once. You want to be able to stop that arcane damage. So that's why that's there. And then Courage of Blade Hold for the aggro matchups, where you just want to race and you switch that with Tunic. And last one we have Valiant Dynamos. This is a last minute equipment change for me. I brought this and also Vambrace of Determination to the RtN and just scoped out, how the field looks, and I found out that there were more Dromais than Oldhams. So I decided to switch it out for the Vambrace of Determination and brought Valiant Dynamos. And I'm glad I did because, I fought Oliver on his Dromai and this was able to save me probably like 6 to 8 health, which is very big. Alright, so yeah, that was my deck. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys have any questions about, if you think I should add different cards, what success you might have had. I would love to hear your feedback. I'll be posting a link to my deck list in the description, so go check it out and try it out on Talishar or in your armories. I may make some more slight changes before Battle Hardened LA, which I am planning to go to. So if you are there, feel free to come say hi. Um, I would love to, meet other Dorys or even non-Dorys that just want to have questions to me. Yeah, I would love to just meet more fans. It always makes me happy. Even on Talishar, people just say hi to me. Really happy to hear that. And hopefully, everyone has a good time. And I can't wait till dusk till dawn, till we get new cards and everything is shaken up again. But till then, have a good one, everyone. Take care.